Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. This is my in-depth review for the Pixel 7 Pro. In this video I will show you what to expect from Google's latest flagship in 8 different areas and how it improved over its predecessor. So without further ado, let's jump in. Let's start with the design and the build quality. While the 7 Pro still follows the same design language of last year, but we're certainly seeing some refinements here and there that are worth mentioning. Beside the more seamless and modern look of the camera bar that you might love or hate, but it's definitely more durable because of the less glass and the more metal. One of the issues I faced with the 6 Pro is the tremendous number of scratches on the camera bar that I started to see on my first week of usage, while the 7 Pro seems to be more reliable so far. Another improvement is the less prominent 5G antenna at the top that now matches the device color instead of this weird bar at the top like we used to have in the 6 Pro. On the front, the display is less curved when compared to last year's model, and that decreases the light bleed across the edges of the display, which is a nice touch. But still, getting a screen protector for this phone is not as easy as flat displays. When it comes to the buttons, they look and feel identical when compared to the 6 Pro, but they are slightly shifted towards the bottom. The difference is very minor and it doesn't impact my daily usage, but this small change will cost you more money to buy a new case while you don't really need to do so. Let me show you why. This is the Spigen Rugged Armor case for the 6 Pro, and when I put it on the 7 Pro it fits almost perfectly. The mic cutout is on point, same for the camera bar. The charging port is centered perfectly. A slight shift in the mic and the speaker cutouts, which is something I can live with. But when it comes to the buttons, the difference in position makes it hard to use. Every time I press the volume up, the display goes off. The volume down is actually the volume up, and the actual volume down button is buried under the case body. That made me feel that Google intentionally changed the position of the buttons to force people to buy the new cases. I even tried it with the 6 Pro case from Bellroy, and it still fits perfectly except for the buttons. So if you want to save money, you can use your 6 Pro case and find a way to deal with the buttons, or just buy a new one if this is something you cannot handle. For me, I will stick with my 6 Pro cases for now. Moving to the build quality, there isn't much to talk about here, as it shares the same materials with last year's models, the same Gorilla Glass Victus front and back, the same glossy aluminum frame, the same IP68 rating, and almost the same weight and dimensions. So overall, the design and build quality of the 7 Pro are great. We do have the same materials of last year, but with better design choices. Now let's talk about the display. The 7 Pro display has big improvements in the brightness and the quality over its predecessor. Starting with the brightness, this display is much more readable under direct sunlight when compared to the 6 Pro. It produces 1500 nits, which is 25% brighter, and that makes a big difference. Yes, it's not 2000 nits like the 14 Pro Max, but I don't think you need all of this. When it comes to HDR content, it's noticeably brighter too. So here's a side-by-side comparison with the 6 Pro. Beside the higher brightness, I noticed more vibrant colors and more details coming out of the 7 Pro. In this scene, the water looks more detailed and everything pops out. The 7 Pro also comes with a full HD Plus toggle if you want to save more battery, which is something we might get on last year's model in future software updates. But the question is there a big difference between the Quad HD and the Full HD resolutions in sharpness and battery consumption? When it comes to the sharpness, the difference is barely noticeable in normal usage, and here's a side-by-side comparison between the two in viewing text. Yes, there is a difference, but to see it you have to zoom all the way in, which is something no one will do in normal usage. And when it comes to videos, the difference is even less noticeable because of the continuous movement. But what about the battery consumption? To identify this, I will do 4 of the most common things we do on our smartphones. Each task will be for 30 minutes under the same conditions, and see the difference in battery usage after finishing all of them. I will start with a 4K 60 HDR video playback, browse the web, do some social media scrolling, and finally play a game. After 2 hours of back-to-back tasks on both resolutions, the Full HD consumed 24% and the temperature was 42.1 degrees Celsius versus 26% for the Quad HD, and the temperature was 1.5 degrees higher at 43.6. So on average, you will save 1% battery per hour on Full HD resolution. To sum up, the 7 Pro display is the biggest improvement this year over its predecessor. It's much brighter, has a higher quality, less curved, and you can set it to Full HD to save some battery. Also, DxOMark gave it the 3rd position in the global ranking after the iPhone 14 Pro models, while the 6 Pro is in the 25th position, which is a huge jump. Now let's talk about the sound and start by listening to this audio sample from both models. I didn't like the sound coming out of the 7 Pro. Yes, it's louder than the 6 Pro, but the treble is so high, which makes it uncomfortable to listen to on maximum volume, while the 6 Pro sound is a lot more balanced and more pleasing to the ears. So I hope Google will tune the speakers in future software updates. Now let's talk about the Pixel 7 Biometrics. This is the second flagship from Google that comes with Face Unlock after the Pixel 4. Even though the Pixel 4 is 3 years older, but it had a 3D face unlock with a dot projector and an infrared camera, while the Pixel 7 Pro is just using the front camera, which is a huge downgrade. In my experience with the 7 Pro face unlock, the setup process was very simple and it didn't exceed the 10 seconds, and it does give a faster unlocking experience about 50% of the time. But there are a lot of limitations that give an incomplete experience. First, it doesn't work in low light. It doesn't work with sunglasses if the require eyes to be open is activated, and it doesn't work for payments or apps verification too. So I consider it as a secondary option that might help sometimes, but it's far from being a feature that I can rely on. The second biometric method is the under-display fingerprint, same as last year. But the only difference this time, it works perfectly out of the box. I didn't need to wait for software updates like what happened with the Pixel 6 models. I used to face a hard time unlocking my 6 Pro under direct sunlight, but it seems like Google fixed this issue for the old and the new models, and as you see, both phones work perfectly under direct sunlight with 0 failed attempts. So the actual improvement is in the software, not the hardware, because the 6 Pro of last year is as good as the 7 Pro right now. Next, the battery. The 7 Pro comes with a 5000 mAh battery, same as the 6 Pro. However, Tensor G2 is expected to be more efficient. I did an in-depth battery comparison with the 6 Pro that you can check by clicking the link showing now on the screen or in the description below. To sum up, the comparison included 4 tasks, which are video calling, gaming, social media scrolling, and playing a YouTube 4K HDR video. The display brightness was set to 80% on the 7 Pro and 83% on the 6 Pro to match their outcome, and it took place using cellular data instead of Wi-Fi. The 6 Pro battery died after 4 hours and 36 minutes, while the 7 Pro was at 10%. And after 41 minutes extra, the 7 Pro battery died with a total of 5.3 hours of screen on time. Yes, the 6 Pro is a year older and its battery performance is not as good as new, but in the YouTube HDR video playback, the 7 Pro display was much brighter, and this didn't stop the 7 Pro from taking the lead by 10% and 41 minutes of extra screen on time. However, Tensor G2 was worse in the thermal management. In 3 tasks out of 4, Tensor G2 produced more heat when compared to G1. Also, in the 4K 60 video recording, the 7 Pro had a thermal warning after 8 minutes and 6 seconds, while the 6 Pro reached 10 minutes and 52 seconds under the same conditions. So overall, Tensor G2 didn't show any groundbreaking results in the battery drain, just a 10% difference when compared to a 1-year-old phone, and the thermal management was even worse. So hopefully it's a software issue that Google can fix in the future, but if this is the best we can get from Tensor G2 in thermal management, I think we have a problem here. Now let's talk about the performance to see if Tensor G2 will make a difference. I will start with a basic app launching speed test. I will try 5 apps and 5 games, so let's find out which one is faster. In the games category, the 7 Pro was faster in 3 games, World War Heroes was a draw, and Shadow Fight was faster on the 6 Pro. Now let's check the apps. In the apps category, the 7 Pro was faster in 3 apps, Instagram was a draw, and the 6 Pro was faster in 1 app. So Tensor G2 performance is very similar to G1 and sometimes slightly faster by less than a second. When it comes to RAM management, both phones kept all 10 apps and games in memory without any refresh, which is great. One more thing to test here is the upgraded modem of the 7 Pro. I will start with the Wi-Fi speed test. Both are connected to the same 5 GHz network, so let's see which one is faster. The 7 Pro was a lot faster in the download and the upload speeds, which is a great news. Let's end this with a cellular data speed test. The connection is LTE as Pixel phones don't support 5G in the UAE just yet. And now let's begin. Once more, the 7 Pro was noticeably faster in the download speed with a slight edge in the upload. So that confirms that the 7 Pro has improved a lot when it comes to the connectivity when compared to its predecessor. So overall, based on the performance and battery comparisons I made in this review, Tensor G2 is slightly better in battery consumption and the app launching speed, and a lot better in the connectivity. But the thermal management is worse than G1. So let's wait for more software updates and see if things will change, but for now, this is what we have. Next, the smart features. I created a separate video talking about every new feature came with the Pixel 7 that I'm gonna leave its link in the description if you want to check the full list, but here are my top 3. First, the photo unblur. It delivers amazing results in most of the scenarios I tried it with. In the first scenario, I was shaking the camera while taking the shot, and that resulted in a very blurry image. But with the help of photo unblur, the image became a lot sharper as if it was taken with a tripod. I also tried it with out of focus objects and it did handle this really well. The third scenario was to enhance a very old photo that has a lot of noise, and that also worked, resulting in a noticeably cleaner image. But when it comes to motion blurriness, don't expect good results out of the photo unblur feature. It might improve the image by 10 to 20%, but nothing more, which is fair considering the amount of damage in the shot. The second top feature is the clear calling. This feature reduces background noise during calls. I'm not going to be able to show you how powerful this feature is because I don't have another number with me, but let me tell you that it works great and really makes a big difference. But keep in mind, to get this feature you have to install Android 13 QPR1 Beta 3. The third and last top feature I'm going to talk about is the ability to silence phone calls using quick phrases. Quick phrases is one of the features I use every day and it helps me a lot if I'm eating or typing, so adding the ability to silence phone calls is very useful. I hope Google will push those features at least to the Pixel 6 models because they really make a big difference. And finally, let's talk about the camera before sharing my final thoughts. The 7 Pro comes with a lot of new camera features and better zoom, which is something I'm going to talk about later, but when it comes to the normal photos and videos quality, they look almost the same when compared to last year's model. Starting with the morning shots, they share the same look and level of detail. I only noticed slightly warmer tones coming out of the 7 Pro. Also, the HDR performance is exactly the same. But there are more red lens flares coming out of the 7 Pro when pointed towards a light source in the main and the telephoto lens. The night shots are very similar as well, especially the ones taken with the main camera, but the ultra-wide of the 7 Pro has a warmer tone. The only benefit we get is night sight takes half the time to capture the same shot, so this will minimize the motion blur if you don't have steady hands. The ultra-wide is much wider this year with 126 degrees field of view versus only 114 for the 6 Pro. Not only this, but it comes with autofocus, which will allow you to take macro shots 3 centimeters away from the subject, which is something I really enjoy. In morning portraits, the colors, skin tones, and subject isolation are identical either on 1x or 2x. But when it comes to the blur effect, there is a big difference. The 7 Pro has a much lower intensity, which I like, but in this example, the trash can was completely in focus while the 6 Pro applied the blur effect to it, and that makes more sense because it's located further away from the camera. I think the 7 Pro should have done the same instead of having this flat look. In night portraits, the 7 Pro produced more accurate skin tone, colors, better exposure and contrast, So overall the image looks more natural and less processed. Also the background is less blown out, which looks a lot better. Moving to the selfies, I see a different skin tone coming out of the 7 Pro, but in selfie portraits the 6 Pro did match the skin tone coming out of the 7 Pro, and now both phones look identical. So the 7 Pro has a more consistent processing across different camera modes. And at night the colors and skin tone coming out of the 7 Pro are more accurate, but for some reason my t-shirt is totally messed up. It looks like a cartoon, and I'm not sure why it came out this bad while the 6 Pro did a much better job here. Now let's talk about the zoom. The 7 Pro comes with a 5x telephoto instead of the 4x like last year, with a range of 30x zoom instead of only 20. But also Google improved super res zoom, so you will get more details across the whole range when compared to the 6 Pro as shown here in this side-by-side comparison. Moving on to the 4K videos, there is a difference in the white balance. Once more, the 7 Pro is warmer than the 6 Pro, with more vibrant colors, and that's the case for all lenses. Also, the 7 Pro has less shutter lag while panning the camera. The lens switching from the main to the ultra-wide is smoother on the 7 Pro, but it's exactly the same when switching to the telephoto lens. At night, the 7 Pro video was a little bit brighter with the same difference in colors like we saw in the morning videos. It also produced less noise. The ultra-wide was equally bad on both, with a tremendous amount of noise and lack of details. And finally, the telephoto of the 6 Pro had more accurate colors, but the 7 Pro once more had less noise in the shadows. But what's new here is the 7 Pro can capture 4K 30 10-bit HDR videos, so let me show you how different it looks on the phone screen, because this is not a HDR video. Starting with the morning sample, the 10-bit HDR is a lot brighter with more vibrant colors. Also, the difference in size is only 6 megabytes, which is nice. And here's the night sample as well. Lastly, we have the new cinematic mode that blurs the background while taking videos, but I found it to be a bit laggy while panning the camera. And the blur effect is not natural. Also, the cinematic mode is limited to 1080p resolution with no front-facing camera support. Overall, the cinematic videos look nice, but there is a big room for improvement. So these are all the differences I spotted in the photo and video quality. To sum up, the 7 Pro has a warmer tone in photos and videos, a better skin tone processing day and night, less exposure time for night side photos, better zoom, 4K HDR 10-bit video recording, and a slightly improved video quality at night with less noise. But it also had some issues like the more red lens flares and the weird front camera processing at night. On top of all these differences, Google improved some of the available features too, like the ability to record 4K 60 across all lenses, same as the 10-bit HDR. The speech enhancement can be used in recording 4K 30 videos instead of Full HD 30 like the 6 Pro. And we have a more precise zoom slider with an extra viewfinder to help you point the camera and also lock the focus on a specific part of the scene to minimize handshake. So stay tuned for my in-depth camera comparison between the 7 Pro and the older Pixel models, and don't forget to subscribe to get notified when it gets released. And now let's share my final thoughts about the 7 Pro. This phone comes with plenty of new features in the camera and the software, and almost all of them are great and very useful, in addition to an amazing display, a unique look, great build quality, and better connectivity than last year. But the only thing holding it back in my opinion is the Tensor G2. First, it's not as efficient as I expected it to be, so the difference in battery life is minor when compared to the 6 Pro, and the thermal management is below average. Having a phone with these capabilities and not able to record a 4K 60 video for more than 8 minutes indoors is just a bummer. If Google managed to enhance this part in future updates, that will be the best Pixel phone Google ever made, if not the best Android phone in the market right now. So that's pretty much it for today. That was my review for the Pixel 7 Pro. Please let me know in the comments what do you think. Would you upgrade this year or wait for the Pixel 8? But for now, thank you so much for watching and see you the next video.